Get your free copy of the complete tutorial at www.teachucomp.com/free.
In addition to the primary data sources displayed within the Database Expert dialog box, you also have an array of secondary data sources that are available for use. Many, but not all of these connection types are included for backwards compatibility with older information systems or software. You can click the small plus sign next to the More Data Sources folder within the Database Expert dialog box to view the secondary data sources displayed in a list. As with your primary data sources, you simply click the small plus sign next to the name of the secondary data source that you wish to use to make a connection of that type as your report's data source. If you click the small plus sign next to the ACT folder, you'll be presented with the Open dialog box. You use this dialog box to create a data connection to an ACT database file. If you're trying to connect to an ACT database that is version 2.x or lower, you must select an additional file named crw.act during the connection process. Note that this is not necessary for later versions of ACT. So if you are accessing an ACT database that is at 2.x or lower, use the Open dialog box to navigate to the folder that contains the crw.act file, which is usually placed in the Windows or System32 folder. Select that file, and then click the Open button when finished. The Choose File for ACT dialog box will then appear, and you can use that dialog box to navigate to the folder that contains the ACT database file you want to access, select it, and then click OK. Alternately, if you're trying to connect to an ACT database that's at least version 3 or higher, you simply skip the intermediate step of selecting the crw.act file, and instead use the Open dialog box to navigate to your ACT database file, select it, and then click the Open button to set it as your report's data source. If you click the small plus sign next to the btrieve folder, you'll be presented with the Open dialog box. You use this dialog box to create a data connection to a btrieve, now called Pervasive, database engine. The Pervasive engine is a complex system of DLL and executable files that are also specific to the version of the Pervasive software that you're using. It's important to note that the Pervasive database engine must be correctly configured. You will need to refer to your btrieve or Pervasive database engine documentation to ensure it has been correctly configured before attempting to access the data using Crystal reports. In the Open dialog box, you use the Look-In drop-down to navigate to the folder that contains the Pervasive DDF files. The Pervasive DDF files contain all of the necessary file, field, and index information about the tables in the database. The following 3 DDF files are required and must all reside in the same directory or folder: File DDF, Field DDF, and Index DDF. One set of DDF files normally contains multiple Pervasive data file definitions. Once you select one of the DDF files, Crystal Reports will then add all of the data files defined in the selected DDF to the report. Crystal also takes the default location of the DDF files as the default path of the data files. The DDF files and the data files can reside in different folders, however. If you use Peachtree Complete Accounting, you'll find that this is the type of database connection to use to access tables within your Peachtree company file. You can navigate to the desired company folder and find the 3 DDF files needed to load your Peachtree company data tables. If you click the small plus sign next to the COM Connectivity folder, you will be presented with the COM Connectivity dialog box. You can use this dialog box to create a data connection to any COM or Component Object Model object that's registered on your local machine that can return an ADO or ActiveX data objects record set. To set the COM object as a data source, type the object's prog ID into the Program ID field and then simply click the Finish button. You can use Crystal Reports to make a connection to message tracking logs in older versions of Microsoft Exchange Server. In Crystal Reports 2013, you can click the small plus sign next to either the Exchange 5.5 message tracking log folder or the Exchange message tracking log folder, depending on whether or not you are accessing the message log from an Exchange Server 5.5 or prior or a more recent version. Once you've made your selection, you will then be presented with the MS Exchange message tracking log dialog box. Click either the Remote Browse button to launch the Select a Network Drive dialog box, or the Local Browse button to launch the Choose Directory dialog box. You use those dialog boxes to select the log file which you wish to use for the report. Once it has been selected, click the OK button. That will then return you to the MS Exchange Message Tracking Log dialog box, where you can then click the OK button once again, to then launch the Enter Message Tracking Log Dates dialog box. In that dialog box, you then input the date range of tracking data to pull by entering the date information into the From and To sections. When you are ready, you then click the OK button to finish. If you click the small plus sign next to the Field Definitions Only folder, you will launch a dialog box that asks you to provide a data schema or layout that is used to create the report. A data schema is simply a definition of what fields should appear within a table and what properties should be assigned to those fields. However, there is no actual data within the fields. If you use this option, you must select or create a data schema and place the fields from the schema into the report. Then you must pass the report a data set or record set at the time when the report is actually viewed using a Crystal data object. This driver is mainly used for backward compatibility with older versions of Crystal reports. In the Field Definitions Only dialog box, you can click the ellipsis mark button at the right end of the Field Definition File text box to launch the Open dialog box. You can then use the Open dialog box to navigate to the folder where you have saved your field definition file, or a .ttx file as it's otherwise called. You can then select it and use the saved field definition for the current report. If you don't have a saved field definition, you can click the Create File button in the Field Definitions Only dialog box to open the Database Definition Tool dialog box, where you can create and save a .ttx file to use. In this dialog box, you define the data fields that will be used by the report. Start by typing the name of the first field into the Field Name text box. Then use the Field Type drop-down to select the type of data that will be displayed in the field. If you select the string type or text, then input the length of the field in characters into the length text box that appears. When you're ready to add the field to the definition, click the Add button to add it to the listing of fields that appears below. You can then click any field listed at the bottom of this dialog box and make editing changes to the information shown above. You can then click the Update button when you are finished making your changes to save them. You can also click the Delete button to delete a selected field within the Database Definition Tool dialog box. Once you've created the fields for the data schema, you can then choose File and then choose the Save As command from the small menu bar that appears within this dialog box. Then use the File Save As dialog box to select the location to which you wish to save the .ttx file. Type the name for the file into the file name text box and click Save to save the data schema. You can then close the Database Definition Tool dialog box. In the Field Definitions Only dialog box, you should see the file that you just created listed as the file reference within the Field Definition File text box. You can then simply click the Finish button in this dialog box to finish setting the newly created schema as your data source. When you click the small plus sign next to the File System Data folder, you will see the File System Data dialog box appear. You can use this dialog box to create a report on the attributes of the files and folders in your computer's filing or folder directory system. You click the ellipsis mark button at the right end of the Starting Directory text box to launch a Browse for Folder dialog box. You can click the plus signs next to the drives and folders until you find the parent folder of the files and folders upon which you wish to base the report. Then click the desired folder to select it, and then click the OK button. In the File System Data dialog box, you can check the Include All Files checkbox to include every type of file within the selected directory. If you wish to filter the files included in the report in some way, uncheck this checkbox. You will then see the File Mask text box appear, where you can type a mask by which to filter for the selected type of files. In the mask, an asterisk represents multiple unknown characters. You can check the Include All Subdirectories checkbox to include all of the subfolders within the selected folder within which to search for files and attributes. If you uncheck this checkbox, you will see the Max Number of Subdirectory Levels text box appear, where you can type the number of levels of subfolders within which to search for file data. You can also check the Include Empty Directories checkbox to include empty folders in the data as well if desired. When you're finished, simply click the Finish button. When you click on the small plus sign next to the J.D. Edwards Enterprise 1 folder, you will see the J.D. Edwards Enterprise 1 dialog box appear. You can use this dialog box to establish a data connection to a J.D. Edwards Enterprise 1 server. Here you enter the host, port, environment, user, password, and role information. When you're done, simply click the Finish button to set the connection. If you want to make a connection to an older Microsoft Exchange server, then use the Legacy Exchange connection type. If you click the plus sign next to the Legacy Exchange folder in Crystal Reports 2013, you'll launch Microsoft Outlook. Once you've selected an Outlook profile to use, you will then see the Select a Folder Address Book dialog box. In this dialog box, you'll see the various address books, archive folders, mailbox folders, and public folders that are accessible through the current profile. You can click the small plus sign next to any folder to show its subfolders. You can then click the Outlook folder or address book which you wish to use as the data source for your report. When you click the plus sign next to the Mailbox Admin folder, you will see the Log On to Exchange Servers dialog box appear. You can click the Select Profiles button in the lower right corner of this dialog box to launch the Select Profiles dialog box. Here you can highlight the name of the profile to use and then click the OK button. Then click OK in the Log On to Exchange Servers dialog box to finish. You use this data connection to display data about all of the mailboxes listed in an Exchange server's private information store. When you click the small plus sign next to the MSIIS or proxy log files, you will see the Select Log Files and Dates dialog box appear. Here you can select the type of log files that you wish to access by making a selection from the option buttons provided. Then click the Browse button to launch the Choose MSIIS Log File Directory dialog box. You can use this dialog box to select the folder where the directory logs are stored on your system. Select the desired log file from the list at the right side of the dialog box and then click the OK button. Then, in the Choose Period Used When Logging section of the dialog box, you select the type of filter for the date range to use by selecting the desired option button and then fill in the values to use in the text boxes below. Then click OK when you're finished to set the data source connection. If you click the small plus sign next to the NT Archived Event Log folder, you'll see the Select an Archived Event Log File dialog box appear. Use this dialog box to select an archived event log as the data source for your report. You must be using Windows NT 3.51 or later to access the data in the log files using this connection type. You use the Look In drop-down to select the folder in which you have the archived event log, and then select the desired file from the listing of files and folders shown. Then click the Open button to finish creating the data connection. If you click the small plus sign next to the NT Current Event Log folder, you'll see the Select Current Event Log File dialog box appear. You use this dialog box to select an event log as the data source for your report. You must be using Windows NT 3.51 or later to access the data in the log files using this connection. Use the Select One or More Computers box to select the computer that has the log files that you wish to access for this connection. Each computer that you select is then added to the computers list. You can click a selected computer in the list to also deselect it. When you have the desired computer selected, click the OK button. The current log files will then be set as the data connection. You can click the small plus sign next to the Oracle EBS folder to create a data connection to Oracle EBS data. In the Oracle EBS dialog box that opens, you need to enter the service, database user, database password, application short name, responsibility key, and security group key. You can then click the OK button to create the data connection. You can click the small plus sign next to the Outlook folder to create a data connection to Outlook. This will then launch Outlook and prompt you to select a profile if necessary. Once launched, you will then be presented with the Choose Folder dialog box, which shows an expandable and collapsible navigation tree view of the folders within your selected Outlook profile. Choose the folder to which you want to make the data connection from the listing shown, and then click the OK button. You can click the small plus sign next to the Outlook or Exchange folder to create a data connection to Outlook on an Exchange server. This will then launch Outlook and prompt you to select a profile if necessary. Once launched, you will then be presented with the Choose Folder dialog box, which shows an expandable and collapsible navigation tree view of the folders within your selected Outlook profile. Choose the folder to which you wish to make the data connection from the list shown, and then click the OK button. You can click the small plus sign next to the PeopleSoft Enterprise folder to create a data connection to a PeopleSoft Enterprise server. In the PeopleSoft Enterprise dialog box, you will need to enter the server, user, and password information. Then click the Finish button to create the data connection. You can click the small plus sign next to the Public Folder ACL folder to create a data connection to an Exchange server that contains public folders whose access and control list information you want to view. In the Log On to Exchange Servers dialog box, you can click the Select Profiles button. Then select the profile or server to which you wish to make the connection. Then click the OK button to return to the Log On to Exchange Servers dialog box. Then click OK to create the data source connection. You can click the small plus sign next to the Public Folder Admin folder to create a data connection to an Exchange server that contains public folders whose configuration and usage data you wish to set as the report data. In the Log On to Exchange Servers dialog box, click the Select Profiles button. In the Select Profiles dialog box, select the profile or server to which you wish to make the connection. Then click the OK button to return to the Log On to Exchange Servers dialog box. Then click the OK button to create the data source connection. You can click the small plus sign next to the Public Folder Replica folder to create a data connection to an Exchange server that contains public folders which are replicated across other Exchange servers. You can then access information about the folders and servers on which the replicated public folders exist. In the Log On to Exchange Servers dialog box, click the Select Profiles button. In the Select Profiles dialog box, select the profile or server to which you wish to make the connection. Then click the OK button to return to the Log On to Exchange Servers dialog box, where you can then click the OK button to create the data source connection. You can click the small plus sign next to the Siebel eBusiness Applications folder to create a data connection to Siebel. In the Connection Information dialog box that appears, select the connection type from the listing shown. You can then enter a unique name for this connection to ensure data integrity into the connection name field. Then click the Next button to continue. You then enter the user, password, connection string, and repository information. If needed, you can then check the Apply Current Query checkbox to display the Restrict to Current Selection option, which you can also check if needed. When you're done, you then click the Finish button to complete the connection. You can click the small plus sign next to the Universal Web Service Connector or UWSC folder to create a data connection to a web server. In the dialog box that appears, you then enter the server, a username, and a password, and then simply click the Finish button to connect to the specified web server and use it as the new data source connection. You can click the small plus sign next to the Web and IIS log files folder to create a data connection to a web log file. In the Select Log File Location dialog box, click the Browse button to select the web log file which you wish to use as the basis of the data connection using the Choose Directory dialog box. Once you've selected the web log file that you want to use, click OK within the Choose Directory dialog box to return to the Select Log File Location dialog box. Then click OK here to set the selected log file as the new data source connection. You can click the small plus sign next to the Xbase folder to create a connection to an Xbase database file. You can use this type of data connection to access data directly from DBase files, FoxPro tables, and Clipper data files. In the Open dialog box, use the Look-In drop-down to select the folder that contains the data files you wish to set as the data source. Then select the desired Xbase file and click the Open button to set the selected data file as the connection's data source.
Like what you see? Pick up your free copy of the complete tutorial at www.teachucomp.com/free.